Okay, what's your name again?
My name is Jack Beecher.
Beecher. What's your title, Jack?
I am the Chief of the Small Business Programs Office with the Norfolk District, but I'm also the Program Manager for the Service Disabled Veteran category for the Corps of Engineers.
So that first title is what for?
Chief of Small Business Programs Office, Norfolk District.
So you're Chief of Small Business Programs Office for people who want to do contracting with the Army Corps of Engineers?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
And then you have another special title just to help service disabled veteran business owners.
Correct.
To get contracts.
Correct.
Well, then let's talk about the service disabled veteran business owner. Why is that different? Why
it's the newest small business category in the federal government. The rest of them have been around for years and years and years.
Okay, let's name them for people, because I'm sure we all think we know it, but what are they?
All right, one of them is, I say SDV is the newest, but the Women-Owned Program.
Women-Owned Program.
Women-Owned Program is actually just came into effect about 6 months ago.
No kidding.
Authorizing us to do women-owned set-asides.
So you now have women-owned set-asides at the Corps of Engineers for women-owned business. And what defines a women-owned business?
Well, obviously it's a business that's owned at least 51% owned by a woman, 51% owned and operated.
I see.
Which means that she has to actually be involved in the daily operation of the business. She can't be a figurehead, etc.
Now you say that's new for the Corps of Engineers, but how about like the rest of the government had it for other reasons, right?
Well, actually, the whole federal government had a woman-owned goal. Our goal assigned by the Small Business Act years ago to award at least 5% of our dollars to small businesses owned by women.
Oh.
What Congress failed to give us was a set-aside program.
So that's different than percentage.
5% is the goal as far as the women-owned program.
Oh,
so we're mandated to award at least 5% of our total budget to small businesses owned by women. For service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses, it's 3%.
I see. But now the set-aside, how is that different from 5%?
A set-aside is just a way to get to that 5%.
Right, okay.
So, for example, let's use Norfolk District. Let's say tomorrow I had a project, renovate a barracks at Fort Lee, and it was $1 million.
Right.
I could possibly, if there was at least 2 women-owned companies out there in this general area, I could do a women-owned set-aside.
I see. Before the set-aside a couple months ago, right, or years ago, when was that set-aside for the women?
The actual gold has been around for about 25 years.
But the set-aside.
The set-aside has been around for about 6 months.
Okay, so before the 6 months when it was set aside, you were trying to get the goal of X% for women by making sure they apply and things like that. Now you could give it only to women, right?
Correct.
That's what that means. Exactly. I've been doing this 35 years. I've never understood that.
Now we can designate that, for example, that Barris project, and say only women-owned companies can submit a bid.
I see.
And then it guarantees us that we're going to make an award to a woman-owned small business.
So what categories for Army Corps of Engineers have set-asides now?
Okay, women-owned. Hub zone, which is historically underutilized business zones. You aware of that program?
Okay, I am, but maybe the folks are a HUD zone. That's usually a low-income area.
Yes, it is.
Somewhere.
There are 2 criteria for a hub zone small business company. One, the area that your office is located in has to be in an area of the country, and there are about 5,000 hub zone companies. Hub zone areas across the country. 2 criteria for those is either low economic development, or high unemployment, or both.
Right.
For example, downtown Norfolk has about 3 or 4 different areas of downtown Norfolk that have been designated as hub zones by the federal government.
So if your company is in a hub zone, first thing you got to do is find out if your company is in a hub zone.
Correct.
And then you could go looking for hub zone, not set aside.
Yes, it can be hub zone set aside.
Okay.
Yes.
So we got women like that. So you would know if you're a woman company by 51%. A hub zone, you better ask your local library or congressman to find out if you're in a hub
Yeah,
zone.
you could actually go on SBA.gov
SBA.gov
and find out where the hub zones are in the United States. And again, there are, I think, 5,000 to 7,000 designated hub zone areas all across this country.
Okay, so that's women, hub zone, and who else?
All right, now you have women, hub zone. You have service-disabled, veteran-owned small businesses.
That's the thing that you have a separate hat
That's
for.
the thing that I'm the program manager on.
So that's people who are veterans with a service-connected disability that started a business. So
correct.
they would know who they are.
Correct.
Yeah.
Then you have a group of businesses called small disadvantaged businesses.
Small disadvantage.
Correct. Small disadvantage, and those are companies that have gone through the Small Business Administration. Submitted, I guess for lack of a better word, an application.
Right.
And then gone through an analysis by the SBA to determine their small disadvantaged. And usually what that means, Matthew, is the size of their company, as far as the monies that they're taking in is below a certain dollar threshold, and the owner of the company, certain nationalities may qualify as being disadvantaged. Some of those, for example, are Americans, Asian Pacific Americans, African American, or Native American, African Americans, Hispanic Americans. Some of those nationalities are automatically determined to be disadvantaged. But the SBA takes it a step further. They're going to look at income as well.
So they look at income if you're one of those nationalities?
Correct.
How about if you're not? Then you shouldn't bother
If you're not, you probably won't even qualify.
I see. Okay. So that's an income, the business income. I remember at one time it was like $750,000 or something like that.
Well, it depends, Matthew. It depends on what line of business you're in. For example, if you're in construction, if you're a construction contractor, your average annual gross revenue, as far as business money's coming into your business, yes, averaged out over the last 3 fiscal years, has to be below, I think it's $30 million.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Which is a pretty good sum.
Absolutely, give me that.
Exactly. but for a construction company, the SBA makes that determination.
I see.
They say that companies under 30 million are considered to be small businesses.
I see. Right. Now. If you were, one of those categories and say, well, how do I get, to get that holy water, that sprinkle? It's going to a local, like, small business development center or something like that, or do I have to hire some hot-shot consultant?
You do not have to hire anyone. There are organizations like, for example, the PTAC, Procurement Technical Assistance Centers. They'll help a small business get properly certified. Right. Or there are small businesses office all across this country.
You mean small business procurement offices, or what?
The SBA,
SBA,
the Small Business Administration. They have offices.
Okay.
You can walk into the Small Business Administration office, tell them that you own a company, and you want to know whether or not you're qualified in any of the small business categories.
So not those four, but other small business categories?
Well, you could be just a small business, for example, and not be hub zone, not be woman-owned, not be service disabled, but just small. And there are programs we can do. For example, we being the Norfolk district, we could do just a regular small business set-aside.
Okay, now, so in other words, besides these four areas, there's another general small business.
Small business.
Doesn't matter what color or disability you have. Or
doesn't matter about race, creed, or color.
Anything.
And, obviously...
That's just the maximum income.
Doesn't matter about military service. You could have been a non-veteran. And there are still small business programs that we can do set-asides on.
And I guess that's the biggest pot, isn't it?
It is. It is. Yeah. All the others, the hub zone, women-owned, service disabled, they're all small. You have to be. You have to be a small business in order to meet these criteria. But then they have the SBA has further breakdowns of the big small business umbrella to hub zone, service disabled. All those fall under what we call the subcategories. Small business.
Small business. Now, is veterans one?
Veterans is one as well. Now, the big difference with just being a veteran small business is the federal government, except for the VA, doesn't have a veterans set-aside program.
Oh, so VA is the only one that has a veteran set-aside?
The veterans,
so just these 4 are set-asides generally?
Yeah, those 4 plus the big small business umbrella, every federal agency has those goals.
But there's no veteran set-aside?
But there's no veteran set-aside except for the VA.
Wow. Is that a political thing? Or?
I think Congress... When Congress first wrote the law back in 1999 to help businesses owned by veterans and service-disabled veterans, they said, let's do a set-aside program, first of all, for the service-disabled veteran-owned companies, men and women who were injured while in uniform. Then later on, and again, I'm just thinking this, Matthew, I'm not sure if it was the case, but I'm thinking Congress thinks maybe later on we'll do the veterans set-aside program, but let's have a test of it first. Let's see how the VA does.
Gotcha.
And so they gave VA some unique authorities.
So if you're a veteran-owned business, the only set-aside, the only unique difference is from being just a general small business is within the Veterans Administration contracts.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, you can actually, and I've seen some just recently out of the VA that were for veteran-owned small businesses.
I see. Okay. Otherwise, all the other ones you would just fall under the small business.
Correct.
Yeah. What do you think are the myths that people have in their head, or business people have in their heads out there about getting involved in this kind of stuff?
I think one of the big myths is that the federal government is hard to work for.
I see. As a supplier,
right? As a supplier or a vendor, and therefore I'm not even going to go after it because it's just too difficult. And I think that is a myth. Matter of fact, what I found with some of the service-disabled veteran-owned companies that have come to see me is once they get their foot in the door and they understand the process, then it can be a good business approach.
Exactly.
And I tell people the one reason I think that is the federal government usually has money to spend.
They gotta do it.
And we're going to pay you.
There are only people left with it. For a while anyway.
For the most part, if you do a good quality job and you submit an invoice, we're going to pay you within 2 weeks. I think it's either 2 weeks to 30 days.
Wow.
So the money's good, but you have to do quality work. That's one of the things that I have that I tell small businesses. If you don't do quality work, you're probably not going to get a second opportunity.
And not only that, I mean, it's just learning the system. If it was their business, wouldn't you want to have controls and everything?
Absolutely. Yeah. There are a lot of companies that, for whatever reason, have shied away from the federal marketplace. But over the last 5 years, most of them have been approaching us.
Really coming back?
Mainly because, Matthew, is the commercial marketplace started to tail off.
Right, I see.
And there wasn't a lot of building going on. And
I see. Because
and the federal government, we went up.
Yeah.
We did
a lot of problems you got to fix here.
We did more construction over the last 5 years than at any time in our history.
No kidding.
With our BRAC work mainly.
I see, BRAC.
Yeah, and so what I saw was a lot of companies that were doing private and commercial type work, construction work, because it was falling off. They started to approach us and say, how can I get involved with the federal government? So
wow. And so you're just a guy, and you tell them how, right?
I tell them how. I give them the first steps. Again, if they're a small business, I always tell them you need to go see the Small Business Administration because they're an agency that's set up to help you get established. I tell companies, hey, if you're not in the databases as a small business, you don't want to approach the Corps first because we want to see you after you're established, after you got all your criteria.
So either PTAC, or whatever you got.
PTAC can help them.
PTAC or the local small business
the local SBA office
could help them with that paperwork to get them in the system.
Absolutely.
And learn it.
Then once they're in the system, that's when they start to market the Corps of Engineers, the Navy, the Air Force, because we're the ones that has the money to spend.
Right, exactly. Money got to go to somebody.
And let me give you a great example of the dollar volume and how it's increased. Service disabled veteran owned as an example.
Right.
I started tracking it, Matthew, back in 2004. And the Corps of Engineers back in 2004 as a command. I mean, all of our 37 districts, we did about $58 million.
In 2004, you did $58 million.
$58 million to companies owned by service-disabled veterans.
See,
In other words, we did $58 million worth of SDV, SB set-asides.
Right.
Fast forward.
It's disability.
Fast forward to 2010, last fiscal year, we did $900 million.
$900 million from $50 million. Gosh.
So from about $58 million to $900 million in a span of about 7 years.
God, so that's 1,000% increase.
I'm not smart enough to figure it out, but it's a big
digit
increase.
over, so it's not double, it's not triple, it's 10 times, which is
and a lot of those companies, matter of fact, most of them had never worked for the federal government before.
Wow.
This new program started, taking shape, and they started to get involved. I think one reason it was as low as it was in 2004, it was new.
Right.
It started in 1999 with the passage of a public law, but it took a while to get the word out.
Right.
It took a while for our contracting officers to be comfortable with the companies that were starting to get into the system. And gradually especially over the last 3 years, it's really picked up speed.
Oh, that's terrific. And so we know where to get started. And then it seemed to me that it's learning a system like anything else, but it's sort of like, man, it's like going elephant hunting. Man, when you start figuring out the system and bag one of those, you keep getting it. Everybody wants to get a grant. I said, don't fool with a grant. Get a contract, because once you learn that, it's unlimited almost.
And when companies do good work for us, whether they're small or large, usually the customers out there, the people at Fort Lee, they like them, and they want to try to get them back in. And
it's hard to train a new company.
Exactly. Now, we try not to keep going back to the same company. As a matter of fact, we can. It's all competitive.
I see.
Now, we can do another, if you will, service-disabled vet set-aside when the SDVs do well, and we've done that.
Yeah.
And then there's a selection process that goes on. But many times, you'll see sometimes the same company get selected because they did good quality work.
Well, wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. Educate everybody. This is great stuff. This is where the opportunity. Every major Fortune 500 company takes advantage of this kind of stuff. So a small guy should too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you so much.